Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation TV. I'm Mark Angelides, your host, and today I'm joined by the wondrous Mr. Tim Donner to talk about the amazing flux that we're seeing in our political and media sense organs. Now, if you think that things are a bit strange nowadays, a little bit odd, a little bit off, you're not alone. Tim, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mark. Always a pleasure.
So, Tim, first off, what do you think is behind this insanity?
Well, there's a word for it, Mark. It's used mostly by psychiatrists, sometimes by amateur psychiatrists, but I think it's evident that it's at play on the left now, and that word is psychosis. Now, the left has become unglued. They've become divorced from reality. They've become so driven by hate and rage that they can no longer process information normally. Put in simplest terms, this means the psychotic left sees, hears, and believes things that aren't real. Their reality is divorced from actual reality.
Okay, I mean, could you point to one or two examples of this?
Well, let me just take a couple from recent days, just recent days, and the left has been at this ever since Donald Trump came down that escalator at Trump Tower 4 years ago. Recently, a once legitimate figure named Frank Figliuzzi, who is a former assistant director at the FBI, went on MSNBC and said that Donald Trump was raising then lowering the flag, the American flag, on August 6th, and then raising it to full mast on August 8th. And what he said was that 8-8 is the Nazi symbol for Heil Hitler, so that Trump will be raising the American flag on 8-8, which stands for Heil Hitler. Let me give you another example.
Just so our listeners know, that's because H is the 8th letter of the alphabet.
That's correct.
Right.
Eighth letter and 8th letter, H and H, Heil Hitler. And this is why, I suppose, to believe that, Mark, you'd have to believe that Trump actually engineered the mass shootings in El Paso and Dayton so that he could lower the flag on the 6th of August and raise it on the 8th. You'd actually, pretty much, if you follow it through, that's what you'd have to believe. Now, there's another guy who's the chief of the psychiatry department at Duke University, one of the leading major academic institutions of the United States, who said, and I'm going to quote him exactly. He said, Trump is as destructive a person in this century as Hitler, Stalin, and Mao were in the last century. He may be responsible for many more million deaths than they were. Now, if that is not psychosis, being entirely divorced from reality, I don't know what is, Mark.
It's pretty out there. I believe that was Dr. Alan Francis, who, strangely enough, he was actually I believe the chair on putting together the DSM-V4. And I'm not entirely sure of this, but I think he actually decided not to get involved in putting together the DSM-V5 because he disagreed with, he thought that some of the things were a little too extreme. Is my understanding of it. That might be wrong, but I believe that's the case, which seems strange that he would then go on. Was it Brian Stelter's show, was it?
Yes. Yeah. Little Brian Stelter on CNN. And of course, one of the cardinal rules in the field of medicine, Mark, in practicing medicine, is that you never deliver a diagnosis of someone you haven't personally met and diagnosed. If he's never met Trump, and yet he says this man is as destructive as Hitler and Stalin and Mao. I mean, this is being unhinged to the point of living in an alternate reality. And it carries over, Mark, to their political judgment. And let me tell you what I mean by that. In 2018, the Democrats won the House on the issue of health care. Now, 40 Republicans also retired, which helped the Democrats. But in terms of issues, Healthcare was the number one issue in the midterm elections. Democrats got a big advantage on that and won the House. So the logical thing to do, if you're not driven by psychosis, would be to bring healthcare right to the front of the line in 2020 as well. And they've done that, but in exactly the opposite way. They've now taken healthcare and said they want a full government takeover of healthcare, which means they've just discarded their best issue and handed it back to the Republicans while scaring the bejesus out of the American people.
Yeah, literally all the Republicans have to do here is say, we'll stick with Obamacare until we come up with something else. And they've got the more moderates voting for them already. I mean, to those of us who consume a vast amount of news media, Tim, I guess that's you and I, it seems that the mask is slipping in terms of objectivity. What would you say to that?
Well, I would say that this has to be, Mark, the first time in recorded history that a political party has demonized essentially 50% of the people who hold its fate in their hands in the next election. Because what the left has done now is unable to snag Trump with the fake Trump-Russia collusion story and the 2-year investigation and everything associated with that. They've now turned their attention to Trump voters. And they've said that Trump voters are just as evil as Donald Trump is because they voted for him and they're responsible for this. That means that the Democrats have now done something almost unthinkable. They've written off and demonized almost half the people who are going to vote in the country next year. I know I said that before, but I said it again so people understand what a psychotic strategy that really is.
Speaking of strategy, Tim, in an article you wrote on LibertyNation.com, the psychotic left and the Trump emergency, you hinted at this madness almost being a strategy. Is there something behind it? Is there actually a strategy, or is it just pure reaction that's taking place?
I don't think people in the grips of psychosis are capable of a coherent strategy, Mark, other than to believe, and this happened in 1972 when the Democrats lost their minds with hatred and rage at Richard Nixon, and they put up George McGovern, an extreme candidate who lost 49 states. They're doing the same thing this time. They're so driven by hate and rage and emotion that they're using the opposite strategy of what they should. Now, they lost the heartland states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, to Trump narrowly in 2016. Those were states the Democrats had owned for years. The simple, coherent, rational strategy would have been to go back to those people and say, okay, we heard you in 2016 and we're prepared to be the party of the people again. But instead, what they've done, as I said before, is demonize those people and look to roll up their vote totals in large urban areas and the East and West Coast. That's not a strategy for winning a presidential election.
It's almost as if they don't realize the Electoral College exists.
Well, they
wish it wouldn't.
Well, of course, they want to get rid of it. And in a way, Mark, who can blame them? Because twice in this century, in 2000 with Al Gore and in 2016 with Hillary Clinton, they won the popular vote and lost the election. So, of course, in their one-step thinking, the simple thing to do is, well, just get rid of the Electoral College then.
Tim Donner, thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Mark.
And thank you to you at home for watching. If you enjoyed this, if you learned something, click subscribe down below or head on over to LibertyNation.com where we've got more radio, more TV, podcasts, and a great range of articles, including the one we've been talking about today. Thanks for watching.